got to go, ooh,
Awesome. Good evening. Oh, what a day. And it's going to be an awesome night, right? Sweet. So we've been laying the foundation of what it means to be a disciple, what it means to be a follower of Jesus, what it means to be God's child, and what it means to be loved and accepted by Him. I love that. Matt talked about acceptance last week. And today we're going to do assurance. We did identity, challenge, faith, acceptance, and tonight it's assurance. I chose this topic because I've been working with men for a long time in recovery, probably 18 years now. And one of the things that men struggle with, and you guys might not know this, is their self-worth. And I think everybody does, right? We think, man, we're such sinners, and we put on these masks, and we walk around with this mask on, and it's not the real us, and we do that to hide who we really are, right? Because we're so afraid that everybody's going to find out who the real us is. Well, what's happened is people are loving this mask that we have on, and they're not loving the real us. And we do put the mask on to get people to like us, right? Well, it's literally self-defeating our own purpose to get people to like us because they're not liking the real us, they're liking our mask, right? I love that. And we hide behind that mask and we're afraid to let ourselves out. Well, it just starts compounding and we start feeling like we're a failure. Like we don't deserve any of this, right? I love that song. That's my song for the year. Why would we make a bed in our shame? Right? We've been delivered from that. Right? And we have to build a foundation, and that's why we decided to do this series. Let's look at that scripture. I love it. We'd already read it on the bumper, but man, this is my favorite. Let's do a little context of where Jesus was at when he preached this. He had just went on the Sermon on the Mount, and he just got done giving us some very practical stuff to do for our lives. This is what you do. This is how you treat people. This is how he taught us how to pray. Just practical. And then he teaches this story. And he talks about the guy that built a house on sand. And when the storm came, it washed the foundation out. And then he says this, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like the wise man who built his house on the rock. What words? It was the Sermon on the Mount. How to be a follower and a believer, and how to be strong in your faith. And then Jesus, what kind of preacher would preach and then go out and do something opposite? If God ever calls you to come and give a message, get ready because he's going to make you live it out. I'm telling you, right? This was a very hard week for me. It's been a very hard month. And I've been hearing so many people say that lately. It's been a very rough, last year was very rough. And it's already starting out to be a rough one, but it doesn't have to. Because Jesus came and he taught us all these awesome things. And now he's going to practice what he preaches. This is where the magic happens. You remember, I'm an 80s kid. I was born in the 70s, but I grew up in the 80s. And I remember sitting in 6th grade. It started in 6th grade, and it was 7th, 8th, 9th. We had this guy that would come around to the District 81 schools. He was, I don't even remember his name. He had this voice, but every year he would come and teach us about AIDS, right? Remember the AIDS epidemic? There was no cure for it. It was a sexually transmitted disease. It was kind of taboo. And he would teach us about this. Everybody was absolutely afraid of AIDS. And I remember when it first came out, we thought as students that if we got spit on, we were going to get AIDS. We thought if we held somebody's hand or hung out with them, we were going to get AIDS. And because at first they didn't know a whole lot about it. Well, then they started to learn what was going on, and they started teaching us and educating us. And the people who had it or were thought to have had it, they were kind of shunned, pushed away. They were kind of like, seemed like the outcasts of societies. I've had some very good friends of mine. Brother died of AIDS. And, well, Frank, man, what an awesome guy he was. But anyways, in the Bible, there was a kind of an AIDS. And we all know it to be leprosy. You ever heard of leprosy? Leprosy is, now they call it Hansen's disease. You can actually get it from armadillos. Yes. And there has been cases of it in the United States, but it's really prevalent in other countries, third world countries, where they don't have very good hygiene. It's still going on today. Wow. Yeah. And it's actually a real thing, but we don't get to see or hear about it anymore. But the Bible has full of stories and stuff about it. And it's even written into the law of Moses. So we're going to go back in history, and we're going to look a little bit about what happens when you have leprosy. So let's look at Leviticus chapter 13. I love this. This is God speaking to Moses. It perplexes me why God would make some rules like this, but I really think it was for the protection of his people, right? Because this was a nasty disease and it would spread just from contact. Unlike AIDS, you had to do something interesting in order to catch that. Anyways, Leviticus 13, it's 45 and 46. It says, the person with such an infectious disease must wear torn clothes, let his hair be unkept, cover the lower part of his face, and cry out, unclean, unclean. And as long as he has the infection, he remains unclean, and he must live alone, and he must live outside the camp. Is that harsh? It seems harsh. But I mean, if some guy had an infectious disease, I don't want him sleeping in my tent, you know.